uncomfortable. Okay, I just got the recording in progress sign. So the process of eliminating these prejudices is a process of our, first of all, becoming conscious of them. Most of us would consider ourselves racist, sexist, nationalist, classist, or religionist, but because we consciously do not carry any prejudices that we know about. It is not the conscious prejudices that are the problem. It's the unconscious prejudices that we grow up with, that they, and as Shoghi Effendi says, this inherent sense and often subconscious sense of superiority. And this is what we have to overcome. And to kind of describe this journey for us as a people, I also kind of want to describe the journey for myself, how I came to work through some of these ideas. Of course, becoming a Baha'i was a big awakening for me. I came into a community that held beliefs that I was very much in favor of: the equality of women and men, the elimination of prejudices of all kinds, whether it be race, class, nationality. And so these were things that I was very much in favor of. So when I first heard about the Baha'i faith, I just felt that this is what I believe. And so it was a wonderful fit. So for years, I studied the faith and have tried to develop a greater awareness, a greater sense of the oneness of humanity, because that is the gift that Baha'u'llah has given to this age, the consciousness of the oneness of humanity. And in some ways, I think before this, we didn't have the consciousness of the oneness of humanity. And so we would look down on other people. We would treat them inferiorly. We saw them as the other. We did not, our conscience wasn't stirred when something bad happened to them, because they were not us. They were not our people. They were not our family. With the coming of Baha'u'llah, this consciousness has been bestowed upon humanity. And we now are awakening to all of the ways, all the injustices that have been existing, and are trying to address them, often in a very haphazard and often ineffective way. And the way that we do this is often by clinging to our old prejudices, because they make us feel comfortable. We don't want our consciousness to change. We'd like to have the map of our world stay the same. When all of a sudden things change, we have to change, and we have to see things differently. We have to feel differently, and we have to act differently. Whereas it's rather comfortable to go along in a society that supports sexism, racism, classism, nationalism, and other kinds of prejudices, because everyone thinks that way. Everyone follows the whole social structure, supports those prejudices. So we have this problem of having to break out of this kind of cocoon, this voluntary blindness that we kind of have held on to. And it's only when we get into uncomfortable situations that happens. Now, for me, one of the big changes, especially in my understanding of the Baha'i faith, happened in 1985, when the Universal House of Justice released a message called The Promise of World Peace, and it was delivered to the entire world. In fact, in 1985, I was living in the Virgin Islands where I'm living now. The House of Justice had asked us to try and distribute that message, get that message in the hands of as many people as possible. As I was a professor at the University of the Virgin Islands at the time, I then wrote some lesson plans and some ideas that were then distributed to all the educators within the Virgin Islands. And I began kind of a academic research in the area of peace education. Because as I looked at the message, I thought, let me dedicate my research to promoting this highest quality of peace education. And for some years, I pursued that. And as I studied it, I began to realize that we can't have peace unless there's unity. And this is something that Baha'u'llah has talked about. And so that's when I began studying about how can we create greater unity among the people so that peace can come about. And that's when I got involved in multicultural education, trying to understand how the various cultures can be blended in a unity and diversity. And again, as I began studying more of the writings and of the science of these things, I realized that really unity is based upon justice. And unless there's justice, you will not have unity. And so I began to explore justice and justice in education. And then finally, I began to look at this more holistically and realize that without a foundation of truth and love, justice would not also prevail. And so I kind of have come down to the idea that we need to change the way we see or think that is guided by truth. Right now, our thinking is guided by prejudice thinking. And it's not something, again, we're conscious of. It's something we grow up with. We are trained, for instance, that men are superior to women. This is something that has been embedded in the educational, social structures of society. And it takes effort to counter that, to overcome that. And so we have to work to, first of all, recognize the truth about the differences in terms of gender. And in terms of gender, but for one chromosome, I would be here talking to you as a female. So every other gene would be the same. But, and it actually isn't even that gene that makes me a male. That gene sends a signal to other genes which trigger testosterone in the embryo. And it's the testosterone that makes me look like this with all this fuzziness and bulk, more muscle mass and those kinds of things. It's nothing that I did. It's something that just by the chance of nature happened to me. I could have gone the other way. And in fact, the default is to be female. And it's actually more problems to be the male. But because of history, and as we understand, and the aggressive and nature of man, they have dominated over women for most of human history that we know of. Except in this age where this is all the tables are turning actually. You know, the force, the manpower that made men dominant in society is no longer prime. What is important today are the feminine qualities of intelligence and compassion and the ability to establish relationships, to work with other people, to cooperate. these qualities are the qualities that are most essential in today's world. And so we see that balance shifting. In fact, more girls graduate from high school by like, and most of the data I'll give you is more United States based, some of it North America. But girls graduate at higher rates than boys. They graduate from college at higher rates, like 10 to 13% higher. They are now more highly represented in the classes in medical and legal schools are more than 50% female. And so we see this shift happening in society. And it is those people who have these educations that are able to prosper in the Western society. So we see this shift happening, but yet there still is this unconscious deference or preference to men, and we see it in so many subtle ways. But until we become conscious of it, we are not in a position to change it. And so not only do we need to become conscious, but our conscience needs to be affected to say, this is not fair, this is not right. We need to be able to have our, not only our thoughts change, but our feelings change. That will cause us to actually get rid of the prejudice, because prejudice is not just a thought, it's not an erroneous thought. Prejudice is always combined with an emotion. So not only do you think people are superior, and it tends to be your people who, but that you have a strong attachment to that. You will react very violently if somebody even rationally tries to approach that prejudice. The same is true, of course, with race. Race genetically is very insignificant. Science and religion all acknowledge there is only really one race, though again, we have divided and made some races to be superior to other races. This is a fallacy, it's a falsehood, and we cling to it very strongly. We cling to it in ways that go beyond reason, where it even hurts the people who are the oppressors. The oppressors also are being negatively affected, but still they hold on to this sense of white supremacy in the face of the facts that it's wrong morally, and it's also bad for business and it's bad for society. A third prejudice, and in fact, that document in 1985 is where I got these 5 prejudices from. These are not something I picked up. These were mentioned in that document as the 5 barriers to peace. And so these barriers are the great barriers. And so I then began studying them to see how can we overcome those barriers? Because every one of those prejudices keeps us from justice, it keeps us from truth, it keeps us from love, which then does not allow us to have unity, which will not allow us to have peace, ultimately to have peace. So class is another prejudice. And we have this infused in us in so many different ways. Much of this comes through our media, comes through our education, it comes through our culture, even our institutions instill this often again in a subconscious way, but it is very pervasive and it is also very harmful. And as you know, one of the teachings of Baha'u'llah is that we must eliminate the extremes of wealth and poverty. The other barrier that they talk about is nationalism. And again, having grown up in Iowa and on a farm in the United States, you kind of imagine, well, this is the center of the world, that America is, and that even now, I recently, of course, we've had wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that were very much launched by the United States. And it's interesting when they report the number of deaths, of those wars. They report the number of Americans who have died, as if and we're talking about thousands, but we ignore the hundreds of thousands of Iraqis and Afghanis who have died in these same wars. It's like they're a footnote, or they're not even mentioned often. It's like how many Americans died, as if an American life had more value than another life. And in fact, if I made this statement out in public, many Americans would say, well, of course, I mean, that's true. Just like many white supremacists would say, well, of course. And many men would say, well, of course. And people of the upper class will say, well, of course, because they have these unconscious prejudices that makes them to feel superior to other people. And it violates the very key pivot around which all the teachings of Baha'u'llah revolve, the oneness of humankind. And if we can't, as Baha'is, cultivate that consciousness, then how are we going to be able to bring that to the rest of the world? So that leads me to the last prejudice I want to talk, and then I'd like to open it up and see what questions. We have a small group here, and have a chance to explore some things that might be of more interest to you. And that is religion. Every religion pretty much in the world considers that the followers of that religion consider themselves superior to other religions. And even this attitude infects the Baha'is, that the Baha'is feel that somehow they're superior because they belong to God's true faith. And it is a very seductive and very problematic problem, because Baha'u'llah, again, in this proclaiming the oneness of humanity and this consciousness, has eliminated the division between the believer and the non-believer, the saved and the unsaved, that we are all from one tree. It is a divine tree. We are all created noble. We are all creations of God. And so it's something to think about, and it is this, the House has talked about on several messages, where the Baha'is get this self-righteousness. And it's very offensive, and they get this paternalism. It's the same kind of prejudice that infects sexism, racism, classism, and nationalism. But it's a bit more subtle, and something we don't talk about as much, but it is what the House of Justice named as the fifth prejudice. And again, they were, in that particular message, what they were primarily saying that here you have religions that have as their central message love. Every religion, the central message is love. And if you want to add truth and justice, justice being an expression of the golden rule, do unto others. But truth is the foundation. This is the truth. And so we need to think about these things, because when you have these very religions being the propagators of sexism, racism, classism, and nationalism, giving it the stamp of approval from God, it becomes problematic. So I apologize to Liz. It's a very different time than I gave in Hawaii, but maybe God will forgive me. So I would turn it over to the group and ask you for comments and questions. Yes, I think Elaine, go ahead. I can't see everybody,
Yeah.
so let me actually get my view in a way I can.
Well,
Yeah.
I could ask a question related to racism, because there is an awakening consciousness in Canada, not through the murder of Black people, but through the murder of Indigenous people.
Yes.
You may or may not have seen the headlines about hundreds of children, unmarked graves being found in the residential schools. And so the term reconciliation, as in the South African Truth and Reconciliation process, has been happening in Canada. And we did, when I was still working for government, have a Truth and Reconciliation Committee travel the 5,000 miles of Canada, east to west, and then north to south. But that was long enough ago, and not enough has happened. So I think your point about something has to disturb the conscience and the consciousness, that critical moment has happened in Canada, because this is coast to coast to coast, finding all these buried children. So behind reconciliation are two other words: retribution for the perpetrator.
Yeah.
But when it's a whole nation, it's kind of hard to go around, you know.
Yeah.
Another one that's unfinished in the US is restitution.
Yeah.
Is there going to be restitution for slavery and generations of slavery and wealth that was built for other people? Is that restitution going to come?
Yeah.
But actually, before you get to either of those, there's another word that's been going around in my mind, and that's reckoning.
Mm-hmm.
In Canada, it has become a day of reckoning, when we are finally bringing to account our whole national history. And I just want to tell you one peculiar thing about the Baha'i world. I think many, if not all, of the people who are here are Baha'is. I was in the Holy Land when I went to lunch one day, and everybody was complaining that they'd had nightmares the night before. And they were different nightmares. One was on a killing field in Cambodia, and another one was gunfire on a campus. But we thought it was very peculiar. Why did we all have nightmares last night? And then somebody pointed out that last night, the pneumatic diggers started digging into Mount Carmel, on the spot where the Center for the Study of the Text now stands. And they conjectured that digging into God's holy mountain, the sins of the world that have been buried in the earth were going to be coming to consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a personal conjecture that somebody made, but we all thought, well, that would explain it.
Mm-hmm.
But the question, I do have a question for you, Rod, and it has to do with sexism, because if you look at our group, there are 16 females here, and we've recently been joined by Alan Smith, which would make it 5 males. 16 females and 5 males. So Baha'i men are more rare.
Yes,
because maybe the Guardian said women have greater conscience. I'm not going to the woman's side, I'm coming to the male side. Because today the Germans are busy trying to replace Angela Merkel, who they credit with being steady, steady like a mother, not politically passionate like a male.
Mm-hmm.
And through the pandemic, we noticed that 6 nations that did the best through the pandemic were governed by females.
Yeah.
Because women are created by God to be better managers. I'm sorry. We just think of the whole family. Look at all the heads nodding.
Mm-hmm.
We think of the whole family. I'm sorry. Thank you, Shao. Shao, you're laughing. I'm glad. So here's my question to Shao Yu and Rod and Brett and the males in the room. What is the next opening for men? Men are living in an age, a historic age, that is taking advantage of the natural inclinations of women. What is going to make men want to be here? Because I haven't got a clue. Do you understand my question? I'm not saying it very well.
Yes, yes.
Why would this period of history be appealing to male as they look for a new maleness?
I would like to open it up to anybody else who would like to give a.
Not putting you on the spot.
Well, again, I think I don't want to be the male dominating answering the questions. I think
You're just
women will have
yeah.
more insight and thoughts about this. But it is an observation that I also agree with. And it's not just within the Baha'i faith, it's within several of the religions where you'll see that women are very much the foundation of the faith. But men are and tend to always be in the leadership positions.
But my question, you see, we don't have to, in a way, we don't have to worry about women because women are now looking after the girl children. We're making sure, and the World Health Organization and the International Labor Organization, we're taking care of the girl child because we know when we take care of the girl child, they grow up and women know what their mission for the next couple of centuries is. We got to clean up the planet. And women prime ministers will do it. Liz has something going.
I always do. So you have to shut me up. Okay, so the simple answer is we just obey the House of Justice. The simple answer is we focus on children's classes, junior youth activities, and study circles and devotionals. And we will clean up this world in 1 or 2 generations. You know, looking backwards, we can't move in a straight line if our head is turned like this, looking at the past. What we can do, especially if we are all Baha'is here, is we can look at what the House of Justice is saying, this 1-year plan that we are in right now. We are going to prepare for something that is going to be really dynamic coming in the 9-year plan. And all the answers that we need are within the words of the House of Justice right now. They are guiding us explicitly to fulfilling our destiny as a human race. And so when we see as Baha'is, our study circles and our children's classes and our junior youth activities are serving the wider community. This is not self-serving anymore. This is not paternalism. This is not all the things that we have been going through the transition from a world civilization whose understanding of religion has been through stories and myths. This is a time where independent investigation of truth is required, that we can no longer depend on what we have been told. We have to investigate for ourselves. We have to study. We have to become educated, and we have to take care of the most vulnerable and make sure that the children are raised free of all these prejudices that we are starting to recognize. That to me is the answer. And the rest, in my, because I'm getting older also, the rest of it is rhetoric, because we can't change the past. And I love all the R's, the restitution and blah, 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 but we can't find a material answer for spiritual problem. And everything will thrive when we ourselves spiritually become awakened. It will have an instant effect on the environment. It'll have an instant effect on the economy. All of that is all reflective of the condition, the inner condition of the human being. And the Baha'is have a way to resurrect. My word is resurrection. And we have the ability to be the agents of resurrection for all of humanity right now by just simply following the messages of the Universal House of Justice and participating in the Institute process and making our focus children and junior youth and youth.
Thanks so much, Lisa. I really appreciate it. We have two hands up. Since we are thinking that men maybe have not had much voice here, I give it to Alan Smith and then Geeta. Alan, go for it.
Okay, hi, thanks. In response to the question about men and what men may do in order to advance the welfare of humanity, become as Abdu'l-Baha. Abdu'l-Baha was the perfect example of both men and women. Therefore, he represents the perfect balance of the male and the female in human conduct.
Thank you. Thank you. What a tall order. Thank you so much. And now, Geeta, by the way, I just wanted to mention to the group, and it makes me feel very, very happy because this is a mixed group, friends. So people are coming from different backgrounds, different religions, different races. So the fact that we think we are all the same, it's very heartwarming. Geeta, go for it.
Well, thank you. Rod, you mentioned all these prejudices that we all have, these unconscious prejudices and implicit biases, no matter where we grow up. And for us who immigrated to other countries, we sort of quickly picked up other prejudices as well and added to our bag. And then somehow all of these are, I feel like it's projected back to us. Sometimes I feel like as the only woman in the room, maybe the only immigrant, the only person speaking with an accent, I sort of see myself as other people, how they might view me. And that sort of holds me back a little bit. So I think it's very, very complicated, and we have to sort of be aware of these projections back to ourselves. And I was wondering if you can say a few words about that.
Well, one of the things that I try to do to help me overcome my prejudices is to try to see people's souls and not their bodies. My soul is not a man. My soul is not white. My soul has no class and no nationality. And the same is true with your soul. And if we can look to people's souls, first of all, begin to know our own selves. I think part of the problem with our society today is people are seeking identity in their physical nature. And that is their least common denominator. That's where you're going to be able to find some kinds of division. But we all have a soul. We all are created from God. It doesn't matter your gender, nationality, whatever. And so first of all, to try and see yourself as a soul, that whatever I'm presenting to you today that you see physically here and all of that is on one level an accident. This isn't who I am. I didn't choose to be a man. I did nothing to be white. Even my opportunities to be an American, all of those things happened to me. They were given to me. So if I want to be proud, oh, I'm a man, I did nothing, or I'm whatever, none of those are things that I did. And so the truth about who I am is a spiritual truth. And the same is the truth about you. And so we have to be careful because we are taught from our infancy to make these distinctions and to make value judgments. And so we have to begin to learn to see differently, to think differently, which will cause us to feel differently and to act differently. And that's really what our conscience is about, is how we think and feel. You know, we need to develop a moral framework of what is right, what is wrong, what is truth, what is false, what is love, what is hate, what is just, what is unjust. And we need to try to bring ourselves in accord with that. But quite frankly, we're quite comfortable until we get challenged. And so sometimes if you're encountering people, maybe males encountering a feminist or a woman who is standing up for her rights, is going to feel uncomfortable, is going to feel challenged. And I say that's probably a healthy thing, because they need to be challenged. They need to stop seeing the world through their very limited perspective. They need to stop feeling the sense of superiority that is inherent in their upbringing. And the same with encountering somebody of a different race, class, nationality. All of those things should help you uncover your prejudices and to recognize that justice ultimately will be done. So because you were given a good hand here, says nothing about your condition in the next world. So to take some pride in, oh, look at me, what I've done, how wonderful I am, whatever, this kind of stupidness people get involved in is misleading. This is not it. This is not, when we have this conversation in the next world, you're not going to see me. You know, tonight we're having a conversation. You are seeing me on Zoom, hearing me physically, but really the key part is happening mentally. You know, but there's another level that's being communicated here that's going through these waves, and that's spiritual. That we're talking body to body, mind to mind, and soul to soul. So your soul is kind of saying, is this true? Does this make sense to me? Is this person a loving person? Is this person ego-driven? Is this person being fair? These are kinds of judgments that hopefully you'll be able to see not only with your physical eye and your mental eye, but your spiritual eye as well.
Rod, would you want to answer Effie? Effie, darling, you have written stuff on chat. Now, would you like to address Dr.
Sure. For any of the situations, we've been socialized to believe that there can be only one winner. And when one person wins, everyone else loses, or collectively, men against women, young against old, melanin enhanced against those who are European. So in every situation. So that was just to address the situation. I was saying, well, what will men do? I know this whole thing about, men have to redefine themselves. Yes, because the world has changed, but it doesn't mean that they lose out. And, why are they here? Are they necessary? Are they useful? Things like that. It's like men are just presented with an opportunity to grow and develop spiritually, physically, socially, everything else. So I think that kind of is a way to look at everything, is that, we need to look and challenge all of these things that we've learned and believed to be true. There's no such thing necessarily as only one person winning or one institution or whatever. We created it. Same thing for racism, absolutely created. Sexism, absolutely created. And so it's not going to magically be solved, and we can't just pray it away or love it away. We have to look at, it was systematically created. How do we reconstruct
Mm.
and recreate it. And I'm going to apologize because I'm going to have to leave in about 4 minutes. I have an 8 o'clock Zoom, but I just want to contribute that.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. Please come and see us next Thursday, Effie. Put your email address on chat.
Will do.
I was wondering if Shah Yu could comment, Professor Shah Yu.
Yeah, so I was thinking a lot of things come into my mind when we were discussing this, but I think just a idea that I had is so Elaine was talking about that when Merck is so people blame that she's calm, she's not passionate. I think that's whenever when we want to blame something, we just want to have a reason. We don't want to think, we want to reason, a very simple reason. And when a woman did something wrong, we'll blame that they're a woman. But if a male leader did something wrong, we won't say that that's because he's a man. We'll think that, oh, maybe his party is not doing this decision, that decision. So I think, and sometimes I also experience that, for example, when we have some, so for example, because I'm from China, and when I experience something different, and then people will say, oh, that's because of culture shock. But that is not usually the problem, right? It's something more in depth. It's not because I am an Asian, I experience something, it's not because of culture shock. It's not, this is just a very simple reason that people tend to use this to cover all this complicated thing that is behind. But I think maybe we want to have more, encourage people to think more about what is the reason that is it at the back, and that's not to be that lazy person just using this excuses, I would say, not a reasoning, just using some excuses to explain something that they see in the world. So that's just my a few comments. I hope it makes sense. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Can we ask for clarification, Professor Shah Yu? What kind of situation would occur for you where you express something and then people say to you, oh, that's just culture shock? Like, when would that come up?
I have to think of, I know that I have this discussion with a friend before, because I discussed something with him and then he said, oh, that's because of culture shock. And then I just pointed out that's not the reason, but I forgot what it was exactly, but that was, but I think that I have discussed that before, yeah. I'm sorry, I can't think of an example.
Please
On top
come
of
back
my
next
mind.
week. Please come back next week. I'm dying to know.
Yeah, I would think about that because that was a very close friend, and that's why I pointed out directly to him that that's not, that you are just using a simple excuse. But then if it's other person, then I might think, oh, that you might be right, because I don't want to argue with some strangers. I think that, yeah, that I will. When I think about it, I remember that I will tell you. I'm sorry at this moment. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Professor Shah Yu. I never knew he was a professor until a few weeks back. I apologize for the whole 2 years that I didn't know that.
It's okay. Professor is just a physical thing where you should read into my soul, as Rod said.
Fantastic answer.
It is. I like it.
Now, maybe I can ask Gord Kerr to say a few words. Hi, Gord, since you came back to see us.
Hey, yes, thank you. Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Hey, I think there's so much information in this session. Thank you so much, Rod. You're really making me think of a lot of different things, and I think we kind of start off this conversation with, what can men do as to be part of the solution. You know, women, it sounds like what Elaine said is they know what to do. They know what their mission is and what the direction is, and the leadership roles, and things will take care of themselves, as we've seen in so many countries. You know, even as giving COVID as a great example of how a female leadership works, and has been proven to provide the best results. You know, so often. Another thing that it's something that kind of I felt worked for me, Rod. And I have to just say up front, I'm not of the Baha'i faith. I was raised in the Christian faith, and I'm open to all religions and faiths, but I cannot say I'm Baha'i, so I just need to say that up front. One thing I'm curious about is maybe like the use of pronouns. So for example, this is something that has come up, I've seen this in work and in social media quite a bit, where people, they put beside their name what pronouns they prefer. So either he or she or they. You know, I'm wondering, again, because I'm not familiar, I don't know how this is perceived in the Baha'i faith, but you know, if we see people as spirits rather than as he or she, right? If two people love each other, regardless of whether they are a he and a he, or a she and a she, or, you know, because there is no he and there is no she. And if we all start using words that are they, every time you talk to someone, you say they like this, they don't like this. If we take that away, I think that will help us towards equality, where not saying, well, he says versus, well, she says, well, how about they say. The voices are all equal, the people are all equal, because we're all spirits. So I thought that was really a beautiful way to think about things. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. And just as a side note, if you go and look at any of my writings, if you just Google my name, Rod Clarken, I have a couple books and such, you'll see that I use they almost exclusively in my writings. And this is going back over decades. So to try and, but I think what is partly happening is the whole deconstruction. We've had this such a firm sense of male and female, and also such a firm sense of race, for instance, black and white. All of a sudden, it's like this stuff has become very fuzzy. There is all of this gray area here. And I think it's actually very healthy for our society, because they're having to relook at what do these things mean. We've had a social construction about these things. Let's re-examine them. Let's try to look at them with the eye of truth. I think Sheila, did you have something to say? Okay.
May I comment, Dr. Clarken?
Yeah.
I have a feeling that the mind and hearts of people should change. I have a feeling that our perceptions should change. We can always say they, but if we still see a woman and all those old preconceived notions would come to our mind and we make decisions based on that, it really doesn't matter if I'm she, he, they, whatever. So how Abul Baha talks about the fact that it is so very important that the heart and mind of people should change. And Mali, Ms. Bahman actually put in the chat very nicely that in Persian language, there is no he or she. It is u, and when you say u, it doesn't mean if the person is she or he. But anyways, go ahead, Oakville community, go ahead.
Yes, my name is Maureen, but I am representing all of Oakville with this comment. Just an example from the recent tennis match, the US Open, the two final players were representing a country, but they themselves were from many different backgrounds. And I found it interesting. I read an article that was saying that the UK, which struggles with immigration, was celebrating. They won through their Emma Raducanu. She was an immigrant, and she was born in Canada. Her mother was Chinese. Her father was it Romanian or Russian? I've forgotten, but then raised in the UK. And I just saw, oh my goodness, in a matter of years, this idea of representing a nation through sports is going to become very complex, because more and more people are just sort of representing all of mankind through their varied experiences in life. And so that's wonderful. Anyway, that was brought to you by Oakville Community.
Hey, go Oakville. Any other comments or questions? I think Elaine.
Only to say, I've often regretted that we don't have the Farsi word pronoun, u, because we simply don't have a neutral pronoun option in English unless you say it. We try to get around it with the plural they. But one innovation within Baha'i culture that I think is really going to help us disentangle ourselves from a lot of prejudicial perception and behavior is the way we consult.
Mm.
When somebody puts an idea on the table in a consultation, we never say, well, when Rod said this, or Rod's idea about that, we say this idea, or this option, or this possibility. And it's a real working discipline. We discipline ourselves to never go back to where the idea came from. And it keeps the idea clean, and the idea belongs to all of us. This really helps me clean up my act.
Yeah. Yeah. A good point.
And I also think that the same way that we talk about vaccination of the people of the world, no matter which background, no matter the economic status or anything else, I think as human beings, we have to know that there are people, whether in Afghanistan or in many other countries, that they are suffering of that injustice. And this awareness, to me, will bring us or give us a context as to how we approach these particular concepts. Because in the West, definitely, the women have the authority and have the room to object and talk about it and share their views. I think we need to really come to a conclusion as to what else can we do for the world which is suffering from these injustices.
Very good, thank you. Other thoughts? I understand.
I would like to share a very, very short poem with you, which I feel is relevant. Justice is being. Being is living. Living is loving, and loving is justice. Nutshell.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hey, it's Gord again. Again, this is it's a sincere question. A couple people have mentioned in their this evening that one way that the that we can help bring more people to global peace, basically global peace on earth, is to continue practicing the Baha'i faith, and I recognize that, and one of the things that you mentioned was like which religion being one of the things that you talked about as putting one religion above another, for example, and it's a very easy thing to do, and it's pretty common around the world. I know that we all know that the Baha'i faith makes up a very small percentage of world religions, like maybe 5%. I actually did a quick Google on this, and it's compared to the other religions is small. So I asked kind of again as to the group, how, yes, working with children of the Baha'i faith, that is, the children are our future. There's a song about this. Treat them well, and it goes on. Anyways, how can is there a way? And I guess I'll start with Rod. Is there a way that we can reach the goals of the Baha'i faith without bringing people into the Baha'i faith? Is my question.
Yeah. Well, and I think that is part of the goal of the Baha'i faith, is to have people, all people, participate in this resurrection, this renewal, this rejuvenation of humanity. And so it's kind of, for whatever religion, it's like you possess a jewel of which other people may be deprived of that. And so you want to share it with them with the utmost friendliness and kindness and fellowship, and without at all esteeming yourself to be somehow superior to them, somehow gifted. It is a challenge. It is something that, because we don't have a lot of examples of this in history or within the greater community. So as Alan had mentioned earlier, the Baha'is do have a person who did serve as an exemplar of Abdul Baha. We can kind of look to how he did, but again, to treat all religionists, whatever they are, as your religion, as your family. And in fact, the Baha'is believe that Jesus and Baha'u'llah are the same spirit. In the same way we're talking about our essence is our soul, they have the same essence. They just came at different times in different bodies to present this truth, love, and justice of God to humanity at different stages in humanity. And so to believe in Baha'u'llah is to believe in Jesus. To believe in Jesus is to the Baha'i to believe in Baha'u'llah. And for us to put one above the other is really contrary to the basic principles of our faith. So, but again, because we've grown up in societies that do this, these ideas infect our own thinking and our own feelings. And it's something we have to guard ourselves against, and to not allow that to poison that spirit. So I appreciate you being, and I do apologize that some of maybe the language and some of our references may have left you out a little bit. That was definitely not meant to be in. Sorry.
Not at all. I've got to say, and I've been fortunate enough to participate in a few of these calls, and I must say, everyone who I've encountered with the Baha'i faith has been like this group that we have here this evening, just very welcoming, very love and peace and inclusive. It's really wonderful. It's a wonderful thing. So no worries. I just wanted to be transparent in that I'm not part of the faith, and I'm not an expert, but I'm here to learn. Thank you so much.
I was going to say that's why in the messages of the Universal House of Justice, repeatedly it's mentioned for the Baha'is to work with the like-minded people in the general population, not just in the Baha'i community, but with all like-minded people to pursue the goals that they have.
And actually the House of Justice is pushing us to do that because we had become a bit insular. We were about the Baha'is. We were about keeping our community together and growing. And it wasn't, we had gotten a little bit off of the mission of Baha'u'llah, which was to transform the world, not to transform our little community and have, we have nice little gatherings and love one another and this and that. That's not what Baha'u'llah came for. But again, there is this inclination to seek like-minded people and to make these little groups to become insular. And we have to guard against that. And so it's, we get, like other religions, we have to be careful that we don't lose that spark of faith that Jesus and Baha'u'llah brought. That's what has the energy. It is the word of God that can transform the world, not our little meetings and our potlucks and these talks, for instance. It's how we transform both our inner and our outer lives, but how we transform not only our communities, but the greater community. And so we're in a whole learning process of how to do this. And again, we have to overcome some of our prejudices that have kept us a bit insular. And it's not been comfortable. Many Baha'is have struggled. Liz, you gotta.
Well, sorry, Gord, I didn't realize that I assumed that everybody here was Baha'i and that had the background. Everything I said about the children, about obeying the House of Justice, this is for all people. This is not about Baha'i children. This is for serving the community in general. We are instructed. We're organized in what we call clusters right now. And the cluster includes every human being that lives in that particular area. And so we are not self-serving here. And everything I said was geared to opening our own thinking that we are serving thousands of people that live around us, because we are all in this same boat together. Nobody is exempt from the COVID or the flu or the whatever is going around. We're all susceptible. And if we have armed ourselves and built our immune systems and taken care of our health, and we are sharing these things with other people, it's for all people. It's not just for Baha'is. And so the idea of changing the world in one generation or two by focusing on training children, that's all children. I'm not talking about a few children. I'm talking about if we want to do something that's that dramatic and that we can do if we decide to do, we can start teaching moral education and spiritual education in our schools and not cutting that out of every curriculum because it might be a point of disagreement. And also, we look at all the religions as part of one. It's the cause of God. And this so happens to be the class that we're in right now, because we have the teacher that has given this message for the social reconstruction and resurrection of the world. as well as the restating of the very specific spiritual, the golden rule. Okay, so it's the golden rule restated with social teachings that can help us do that at this time for these people with these opportunities that we have.
Thank you so much. I just was wondering if I can share a personal story with the group. May I?
Please, please, please.
I wanted to say that although our numbers might compared to other religionists be small, but I just want to share with you the impact of the advent of Baha'u'llah, for example, in a country as backward as Iran, about 150 years ago, close to 200 years ago. My grandfather on my father's side comes from Jewish background, the rabbi background, the Kohen, and the family were all Jews. My mother's my mother's father and everyone else, they came from Sayyid background, and Sayyids are the children of Muhammad and the whole story. So basically, it would have been impossible for these people to get together, get married, and have children. And I must admit, Gord, and I say that to you because I think your point is extremely valid, and I really enjoyed your comment. And I wanted to tell you that the Jewish people at that time, about 100 years ago, were considered untouchable. So I know that, for example, my in-laws were teachers, but if they wanted to go to the office, the Jewish teachers could not bring their umbrellas with them because the water of their umbrella would touch their dress. And it was so, when my mother-in-law was, my ex-mother-in-law was a staunch Muslim, and when she was explaining these things to me, I then understood the miracle of Baha'u'llah. And I don't say that because I'm a Baha'i. I say that because I have been in the crossroad of people who were hated as Jews, and at the same time, Muslims were hated by Jews. And when my father went to ask for the hand of my mother, although the grandparents were all Baha'is, it was a revolution. And my grandfather, bless his name, he said, Abdul Baha said, humanity is one. There's no Jewish, no Muslim, and we will do that. At the time, many Baha'is at the time, I'm glad that Rod really broke the curse and said that, they did not participate in the wedding because they thought, how could a Muslim marry? Of course, they would think that these are Jewish, but anyways, we were raised in a family with parents who were so different that even black and white could not really share the same impact. But now that I came to Canada, and now that I see all these prejudices, I understand what Baha'u'llah did 150 years ago in a country which was as background as, I don't know how backward was that, but let me tell you, it was greatly backward. So I just thought I'd share this with you. Sometimes numbers could fool us, but the impact is important.
Thank you for this, as always.
I was going to say in one of the writings, Baha'u'llah says that you are the leaven of the word that you transmute, you are supposed to you are like leaven, which leavens the bread and makes the big change. So although the leaven may be small, but still effective.
Beside me for some days, I've had a very small quote, and the beginning says, "The greatest divine bounty is a confident heart." And as you were speaking, Rod, and I was writing down the prejudices that you spoke of, all of those things are barriers to a confident heart. And I was thinking how the quote goes on to say, "When the heart is confident, all the trials of the world will be as child's play." And it just started to really make me realize that we each as individuals need to do as much as we can to eliminate our own prejudices and eliminate the superstition of prejudices in our interactions with others, and how we can do to help build the confidence of our own hearts, but also the confidences of the other hearts around us, and accompaniment comes, but just, you also said how it was so subconscious often, our prejudices, and that's like a beacon just striking me in my eyes. There was a wonderful talk, and I really appreciate how it came together.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think this is one of the problems. For instance, racism is a big topic right now. And it's very common for white people to say, myself included, that, well, I'm not racist. I'm not racist. But the point is that you don't think you're racist because you can't see some of the prejudices that you have that are unconscious. And that's why I think it's very important for you to have some authentic, intimate time with people who have been oppressed, without being at all patronizing, without being at all somehow superior, and realizing that you have that in you. It's inherent. It's in you. And the same with women. So you do to spend time and to maybe shut up and listen, and to just say, what can I learn? Not what can I do to teach here? What can I learn here? And how can I grow? And to be ready to be uncomfortable, because you don't like to see yourself as somebody who who's been believing things that were wrong, been feeling things that are not proper, or been acting in ways that hurt other people. We don't like to think that, but we do it. And so for us to be able to drop our guard a little bit and to be open to those changes is going to help us grow.
I have a feeling that we can continue this discussion, Rod, with you and with the friends who are present here on the 21st of October. What do you think, Rod?
I would love it. I saw, for those of you who, I love Forzande, and I love these gatherings. I just love being with people. So I hope that is communicated, that I do love sharing this, and I'm always trying to learn. I'm always trying to find opportunities to serve, and so this for me is a real blessing. And so I do send my love to you all. I do welcome that invitation, and do want to just say how much I do love you.
So friends, please jot down in your book, 21st of October, Rodney will continue this discussion. And thank you so very much for coming All of you. Gort, thank you. Professor Shayu, thank you, thank you. And I apologize for not knowing you're a professor for 3 years. Shame on me.
It's okay.
Okay.
I feel embarrassed.
Trish, thank you so much for being here. Our love to the family, Malihijan. At least next week we'll see you and you'll say your prayers. Dr. Elaine McCreary, my teacher and my professor, always, I love, love, love you. And thank you for being here. Sheila, thank you. Thank you very much. This evening was such a warm and lovely evening. Geeta, John, Julia, and all of you. Thank you for being with us. Brett, Maureen, all of you.
Thank you.
Barbara, Dr. Ziai, and if I missed someone, I apologize. Rod, we love you.
I love you too. Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.